Hello everyone and welcome back to Destin Learning. AWS Lambda is a terrific service for delivering serverless functions. In this video we're going to look at how you can use this service. Let's go ahead and get started. AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service that runs code in response to events. It scales automatically, charges only for compute time used, and integrates with other AWS services. This guide covers building a serverless application using AWS Lambda, Amazon API Gateway, and other AWS services. To set up AWS, you need an AWS account, basic knowledge of JavaScript or Python, AWS CLI installed and configured, and optionally, the AWS SDK. To create an AWS Lambda function, first sign in to the AWS Management Console. Then, navigate to AWS Lambda by searching for Lambda and clicking on the service. Create a new function by clicking Create Function, choosing Author from scratch, naming your function, selecting a runtime, setting an execution role, and clicking Create Function. To create a basic Hello World function in JavaScript, scroll down to the code editor section of your Lambda function and replace the existing code with simple Node.js code. To deploy the Lambda function, click the Deploy button to save and deploy it. To set up an API gateway for your Lambda function, navigate to API Gateway in the AWS console, search for it, and click on the service. To configure routes, add a new route by clicking on Add Integration and choosing Lambda. Select your Lambda function, Hello World Lambda, and set the method to get. To create a new API, click Create API and choose HTTP API, then click Build. After configuring the route, click Deploy and note the API endpoint URL. To test your application, open your web browser, paste the API Gateway endpoint URL, and you should see the response, Hello from AWS Lambda. You can invoke the API endpoint using curl or Postman. For curl, use the command curl https://your-api-endpoint.amazonos.com/. For Postman, open the application, enter the API endpoint URL, and send the request. AWS provides tools to monitor and troubleshoot Lambda functions. You can view CloudWatch logs, where AWS Lambda logs all invocations. Navigate to the CloudWatch service in the AWS console and view logs generated by your Lambda function. You can set up CloudWatch alarms to monitor your functions. These alarms can trigger notifications if the function fails, exceeds execution time, or any other metric you wish to monitor. AWS Lambda can interact with other AWS services like DynamoDB, S3, and SNS. For example, you can save data to DynamoDB or trigger a Lambda function when a file is uploaded to S3. Install AWS SDK if needed. To enhance Lambda function security, add user authentication using AWS Cognito and secure your API with IAM roles and policies. Additionally, use environment variables to store sensitive data or configuration settings like API keys and database URLs. It's important to clean up resources after testing to avoid unnecessary charges. To delete a Lambda function, go to the Lambda console, select your function, and click Delete. To delete an API gateway, navigate to the API gateway, select the API you want to delete, and confirm the deletion. In summary, by following this guide, you've built a simple serverless application using AWS Lambda and API Gateway. This architecture scales seamlessly and requires minimal management, making it perfect for lightweight applications and microservices. To expand, integrate additional AWS services, add advanced logic, or create complex workflows. That's all for this video. If you like this video, please click the thumbs up button. If you would like to see more video like this, please consider subscribing to our channel.